Well, hello and welcome, everybody. My name is Steve Teresi. I'm the Senior Director of Training of Technical Services here at JL Audio. I am joined today, as always, by my buddy Rob Haynes from Southern California. Please say hello, Rob.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. And since it is Veterans Day, thanks to all of you that serve and make the sacrifices for us.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And from the greater Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania area, it's Mr. Kevin Ferry, the man of the hour. Please say hello, Kevin.
What's happening, everybody? Thanks for joining us today.
Fantastic. This is kind of an interesting session. It's a little bit different than what we normally do. Usually we have a specific topic that we get into or something along those lines. But we felt with the launch of Tune 4 and the pending launch of our Max hardware, we might take an opportunity to answer some of the questions that we've been fielding since the initial launch. So we've kind of put together a list of things that Kevin's going to walk us through, but I wanted to put it out there. The topics that he shares initially, if you have specific questions that you want to ask about those topics, let's drop those into the chat. Rob and I will be minding the chat as much as we possibly can, and we'll kind of either feed Kevin some of the details of that, or we'll just straight up interrupt him. But either way, we are here for you, and we want to try to answer as many questions as we can. We fully expect that we may run into a second episode some other time. Totally get that. And please know that we're focused mostly today on getting up and running, not the specifics of how to tune or how to do certain specific things, but more of a general application of how to get something working the way you want it to work. So I'm going to be quiet maybe just for a minute or two and let Kevin take over. Go ahead, Kevin.
Before Kevin takes over, just to be clear, we're mostly talking about Tune 4 today with a USB microphone or sound card. I already see we have some questions coming in about demoing phase traces and all of that. Since we're still a little bit, not far away from Max launching, and no one has a Max to use yet except us cool people, we're going to avoid some of those topics until we get a little closer to the launch on that. But we really want to make sure the questions we've been seeing using Tune 4 with USB microphones or sound cards, we address those and really get you set up to get up and running with what's currently available. So
just so you know, as soon as I saw that question pop up, I got my test rig over here set up, and if we have time, we may be able to get to those questions as well. So just know that'll have to go towards the end of our session, but we may be able to do that for you.
So I saw there was one question I'm going to address really, really fast. Somebody asked for what microphone they would that we would suggest or using. I suggest using 5 microphones that come in this really, really nice looking case back here.
Yeah, but if you do something like that, you got to answer Glenn's question of when.
What was Glenn's question?
He wants to know when will Max clamps be shipping? I think he means Max boxes. When will they be shipping? So the answer on that is soon. We do have some product inbound. I just don't know where they are just right now. I do know that they are coming, so you might want to check with your retailer, unless you are one, then check with your receiving department. That may be sooner than you think. There are more on the way, so whatever doesn't ship right away will be shipping soon after that. So they're coming. Believe me, they are coming.
Perfect. To answer Louis' question real quick, though, since we brought it up, I know for us at JL Audio, we've had success. I know, Steve, you have the Dayton, was it the UMM6?
Yes, this guy here.
USB microphone. Mm-hmm. We've also used the Audio Frog microphone from Andy Waymeyer. I don't have a USB microphone, but I've got my Behringer USB sound card with a Dayton XLR microphone that plugs into that. And, of course, I got my Max as well. But when I'm not using that, any of those that we mentioned are going to work. And really any USB-based microphone from a legitimate company should work just fine. But those are the 3 we would, from working with, we would recommend.
I definitely, and man, I forgot about that conversation we had earlier. I definitely
already getting off topic.
We talked about we needed to stay on track. And
yeah, well, you know,
we didn't even get on a track yet. So. I definitely prefer having the external sound card. It gives me a couple little options of doing a few things outside of just taking acoustical measurements, which is nice. But you do have to be careful on voltage and stuff if you are trying to take an electrical measurement. Make sure you stay within the specs of your sound card. Also, the sound card has an external adjustment on it, which for me personally, and these are literally personal experiences on it, I can adjust that input level very easily rather than going to a secondary spot to change that up. So it's nice. I just turn all of my internal volumes all the way up, and then I use my my sound card over there to make any finite adjustments that I need to go ahead and do. If I find that I'm clipping it, I can just go over and turn that knob down a little bit or anything like that. So for me personally, I do like the sound card being separate. It just adds in a few handy little things on there, but it's definitely not needed by any means, and just depends on what you're doing, what your budget allows, and all of that good stuff. I see you want to say something.
With that said, Rob, there's a bunch of really good questions coming up in the chat.
Yeah,
if you hold on to those or store them, do whatever you got to do to make that magically happen. In the meantime, Kevin, why don't you put up the list of the things that we were planning to talk about so we can get back on whatever track that was?
Yeah, let's get on track and get going there. So thanks, Rob, for putting that up there for me and taking a look at some of this. So we are going to get through these. And like we said, if we have some time at the end, we'll go through these. And it is going to be very kind of laser focused on these pieces. We're not going to get into a lot of the other things. Now, if you do have time at the end, we will get into some of your other questions there. So how do I get my microphone to work with Tune 4 is one that we get quite often. So we're going to dig into that pretty good. How to use the signal generator. We put this really powerful tool in there for you guys to be able to utilize and want to make sure that you know all of the different options that go along with it. Changing trace colors and all of that. So when we talk about traces, when you're taking a measurement and that displays up on there, or your target lines or anything like that, that's what we're referring to as traces on there. And if you're able to go in there, change the colors and all of that stuff. And what is the spectrograph? And I know Steve's going to jump in on that one and have some input on that one, because he utilizes that quite often. And it is a great little tool that adds into with your RTA and all of that good stuff. So how do I set levels for taking measurement? And this one actually came to me personally from a couple different areas, and we're going to get into the different areas of level settings and kind of where to focus on and work with that. And then, can I use two monitors with Tune 4? And do I actually need to use two monitors with Tune 4? And we'll deep into that a little bit real quick. And then, what is the best way to tune a tweak? So those are the main questions that we have had come in, and let's get started. And we're going to get started with Tune 4 and setting up a microphone on here. So I'm going to actually switch over to my Tune screen. So Rob, if you can put me full screen up there, you can see my Tune screen just like you would kind of see it laid out. Actually, I had my spectrograph down here at the bottom. We can change this to meters and gains and RTA. This is kind of what you would see if you first started off and got going there. So the first thing I want to do is connect my microphone to the system, to my computer or my sound card, and then get my sound card into my computer itself. Now, depending on if you have a Mac or you have a PC, you may have a couple different adjustments that are on there. Rob, the video guru, has created a help center article with the ins and outs of setting up the USB microphones and being able to do that on Mac as of now. And the PC one will be out there very shortly, but they are very similar to one another. It's just the different places that you go to get the different settings. So excuse me. Other than that, they are very similar to one another. All right, so once we get that microphone connected to the computer, we'll actually come up here to our Open Measure Settings icon in the upper left-hand side and select our General tab. If we are doing this for the first time, the General tab will be the first one that does come up for you. And we see our tune measurement settings right here. We have our input from and our signal generator. and our channel output there, or channel input. And we need to make sure that we select all of these. So I have my sound card that is connected to there, and we can come in and select the sound card, which is my Behringer UMC 44 or 404 HD. Now, depending on the sound card or the microphone, it may not give it that native name. It may just say USB mic or something like that. Just be aware of what your device is named as. And then you want to come in and select the channel. Now,
Kevin, real quick on the channel thing, this causes a lot of confusion. They select their microphone, and very often they forget to select the channel. On Kevin's card here, you notice when he clicked the selection box, there was actually 4 channels that it could be, because the Behringer card actually has 4 inputs. So you could pick any one of those. By default, we're going to tell you to pick channel 1 and make sure your mic is on channel 1. Sometimes you don't even have a choice, so channel 1 is your only option. We're working on an improvement to make this auto-select channel 1, just to make that a little bit easier for you. Kevin's about to touch on the other information on the screen, like sample rate, and when he's done with that, I want to interrupt him about that field for signal gen, unless he covers it. So prepare for another interruption.
I am prepared. So when we take a look at this right here, we've got our sample rate. Now that we've selected our channel on there, and we're good. And I do suggest, like Steve said, always use channel 1. It's very easy to remember. If you're switching channels where your microphone's plugged into, it gets a little confusing. You may select a different channel, and then you'll notice once I selected channel 1 on my meters and gains, I am getting a reading now. So it is bringing and giving me input there.
It works.
Right? You can see me talking. Apparently, I'm talking very loudly over here right now. So you can see that it is working there. One of the other things that's really cool is if you open Tune Up and you accidentally forget to plug your microphone in or your sound card in, you can hit this little refresh button after you've plugged them in. So you open Tune Up.
Whoa. What do you mean? I don't have to shut down the software and relaunch it? I can actually just refresh it from within the software?
Nope, you do not have to shut down the software.
Mind blown.
It's very, very nice. It's very, very simple. You hit the refresh button after you've plugged in your hardware, and it will automatically populate it up for you. It'll give you a little warning and say that Tune's going to refresh there, blah, 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 blah. You hit yes, and you move on, and then your sound card will populate on there. Now, sample rate. If you're using a sound card or if you're using a Mac, sometimes this the Mac side of things is really nice because your sample rate usually doesn't matter as much. The operating system kind of makes some adjustments to go in there. But if you do happen to see a yellow triangle next to the sample rate, that means that that sample rate's just not compatible with your microphone or your sound card that's giving you the input. You'll want to go in and change that sample rate to one that is compatible with the hardware that you are using. So just be aware, look for the yellow triangle. If you see it, you know that you need to change your sample rate, and then you will be good once that triangle goes away for you.
So furthermore on that, while Kevin comes up for air, the change of the sample rate, so you can change it anytime you want. So like by default, it's going to be at 44,100. That's what we normally would use, but your device may need something different than that. So if you see the exclamation point in a triangle, click the down arrow and pick one of the other 2 options that you have. Doesn't matter which one, really. I normally would go to the next one down, 48, and then try 96 if you want, whatever. What I have found on most systems, that once you make that selection, you can then change to any one of the 3 options without any issues. So as long as the exclamation point is not visible, your system should work. So once that thing goes away, you're good to go. So pick your input from, select your sound card or your microphone, select your channel, make sure your sample rate doesn't have an exclamation point, and you are taking measurements. So now Kevin's going to talk about that signal generation field or generator field. Go for it, Kev.
Yeah, so the signal generator, so since I am personally using my sound card, it has 2 RCA outputs on it that are going into my source unit, which is technically directly into my amplifier at this point in time. I am going to select my sound card here. However, if you are using something else, like if you're just using the output of the a mini jack output of the computer or whatever, you would want to select that as your output. This is whatever you want to send your signal out from the signal generator, whether it's pink noise or whatever, it is going to send that out. And this is the output that it is going to send that out in. So again, I'm using my sound card with some RCAs coming out of my sound card. So I'm going to go ahead and select that sound card there in a little bit. We'll get into some of the other signal generator or SigGen settings here in a little bit, but I'm going to go ahead and close out. Now down here in my RTA, I can come over. We see my sound card is showing up here. I'm going to select that, and I am now taking a measurement. However, I can see this little pink arrow in the center of the screen down here is showing me that my RTA or my measurement is off the screen. So I want to put an offset in here, and we'll get into some of these why we're doing this and all of that here in a little bit, but I just want to go ahead and put an offset in there so that way I'm now going and displaying, we're taking a measurement, everything is good and ready to go on that. So just makes it nice and easy. You got your microphone connected, you go in there and select it. It may be off the screen. If it is, then you go ahead and put an offset in there to get your measurement up on the screen. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about these offsets and all of that different stuff. I just wanted to show you that I am up and running, taking measurements now that I got everything set up in there.
So let me just kind of summarize. Kevin has covered a whole bunch, and this is a really important topic because without getting your mic connected, you're not going to do anything. So we want to make sure everyone understands this. Essentially, what you need to do is you need to identify what mic you're using in the software. So the software says, all right, I know where to get my signal from. You need to know what channel of that device. So in this case, there was 4 options. We picked option 1, and that's where the microphone was. And you have to make sure your sample rate is compatible with that device. So once those 3 criteria are met, you are technically able to take measurements. Now, the thing with the signal generator, Tune has a very powerful signal generator in it, and you can use an output. You could also use your computer's default output, which will be a headphone out. So that headphone out, then go to like RCAs and into your system, or like what Kevin was doing, his sound card has an output. So he's using that for his signal generator output. Technically, you don't need to use the signal generator, but it's so much cool stuff, you might as well just use it. It's there and it's free. So that's a really good thing. So then once you've done that in the software, you go into the graph, you have to tell the graph, okay, what am I trying to capture? The meters and gains is automatic. It's going to show you that right away. If you want some details on it, you can click on that or use the drop down. But on the RTA, you have to tell the software, I want signal to come from this particular microphone. And once you do that, you're ready. And as Kevin already pointed out, that the I call them data detection arrows. They'll point to where the data actually is. Follow those arrows and you'll find your data.
Yeah. And that brings us into our signal generator, Steve. That was a good segue in getting our outputs in and all.
Pretty good that way, aren't we?
So that is next on our list. And I want to talk about a few things before I get into using the signal generator and showing you all of the kind of ins and outs pretty quickly on it. Depending on your setup, you may not have a usable input. And what I mean by a usable input is you may not have a mini jack onto the factory receiver. Most aftermarket receivers do have that little mini jack input on them. But if you have an OEM that you don't have a mini jack onto it, you may not have that usable input on there. So there's a couple ways that we can go ahead and get directly plugged in there depending on your system. So depending on your setup, direct plug-in from your computer or sound card is the best way to do it if you can. So just keep that in mind. If you can do it, get that direct plug-in. It is going to make life quite a bit easier for you. The SigGen does give you the ability to save a WAV file, which is nice. Most receivers now do have a USB on them. I mean, even my 2013 Chevy pickup truck has a USB on it, and that's how I can get signal into it. So I can download, or I can not download, I should say, but I can create a WAV file with the signal generator, and I can take that WAV file and load it onto the USB drive, and then just plug it in and play it from the factory receiver on there. The other way to do it is...
Just for the record, Kevin, let me just interrupt you real quick. While you can create your own wave files using the noise files that we have on there, like pink noise, pink periodic, white periodic, as well as sine waves and things of that nature, you can also play back any wave files you already have. So if you have wave files of other noise types or even music, you can use those files to play through your software and out to whatever audio system you're using.
Yeah, and one thing I did have, one of my older vehicles was a Ford pickup truck. It did not have an auxiliary input, and I was using a really good OEM integration piece on it. I measured the outputs of that OEM integration piece. It came out, they were flat, everything was good. So I actually just plugged directly into the amplifiers at that point in time and ran my SigGen directly through my sound card into the amplifiers and did my tuning that way, because I knew upstream wasn't interjecting any funkiness in there, so I was able to grab it at that point on there too. So again, though, grabbing it as far upstream as you can possible is the best way to do it, and doing it hardwired in is the best way if you can do it. Downloading a file and putting it on iTunes and loading it onto a phone and then Bluetoothing it over to the receiver is probably not the best way to do it. And by probably not the best way to do it, it's not the best way to do it.
Especially if what you're doing is analysis and you've determined that the, like Kevin said, there's no funkiness going on within the unit that you're sending signal through. There's no need to jump through any of those other hoops. You could just use right from tune directly into the amplifiers if you had to bypass because you didn't have an input. Don't sweat the details on this one. You're probably not going to be listening to your audio system through tune software. It's probably not going to happen, but you may be evaluating the system, doing your measurements through tune software. And in those purposes, this is more than adequate. It's actually a really good option. Like Kevin said, it is probably the best option to go ahead and do what we're suggesting. Use the signal generator to either play back a wave file or real-time generation, create those signals, send them out to an aux in if you can do it. That's the best bet.
Yep. So let's show you the signal generator and kind of how to use it and kind of get into a couple things very quickly with it. There's two places you can access the signal generator, either from this area here, which is nice. It's got a couple shortcuts on it. You have your play button here. You have your selection of different noises that you can go ahead and play from there also. Or you can click this little hamburger here, these three lines, and that will take you directly over to your measurement settings to your signal generator on there too. Or you can access them just like we did before. We come over and select the three lines in the upper left, gives us our measurement settings, and then select the signal gen tab there. So now that we see our signal gen tab, we come in and we can look at all of the different things that are options here. Steve mentioned that you could play a wave file through the SigGen. You can go in there and select your own wave file if you want to and be able to play that directly from the signal generator through Tune 4 software.
Now sorry to interrupt, Kevin. Real quick, though, if you guys notice, the play wave file right now is grayed out. In the middle of the measure settings tab there where that big play icon is, you need to switch that to file playback. Once Kevin clicks that, now he can go and load in the wave file above.
To load the wave file, yes.
Yeah,
correct.
I can load the wave file.
Then you can play it from there if file playback is selected.
Yep. Good point, Rob. Good point. So I'm going to go back to real-time generation. The files that we give that are available and the capabilities of this signal generator, it'd be a pretty rare case that you'd want to go in there and load a wave file into Tune 4 there. You'll notice I have channels 1 and 2 selected here as my defaults. These actually are the 1 and 2 channels on my sound card. So that is the RCA outputs of my sound card heading out and giving me my output for my signal generator there. I can come in, I can choose the different noises that are available on there, and I can come in and create and save that there. So I can come in here and create a wave file. Depending on what I am looking at, I can do periodic pink noise, which I have here now. I can hit cancel. I can come in and grab a sine wave, and I can select any frequency that I want on there. So if I want a 750 hertz sine wave, I can come in and create that sine wave and name it. We can just name it 750. Oops. Wave, and hit save. Now to go and access those files, it's pretty easy. So I'm going to drag this screen over here. This is just my Finder window for Mac. If you go have a PC, it's going to be very, very similar. You just go into your Explorer and pull up in Documents, JL Audio, and you'll see a tune folder there. I'm going to select this tune folder. And I have a few different options here: projects, targets, traces, and wave files. So I can see that my 750 hertz sine wave file is right there, and I can take that file and drag it directly over into my thumb drive, and I will be good to go. And I have a couple other ones that I've saved on here earlier today and at other times on there too. So there are some options in there. You can go ahead and save it and then just drag it right over to your thumb drive and plug that thumb drive into your receiver, and you will have that file on there and ready to play. So it makes it nice and easy on there. You don't have to go searching on the web or anything like that for those files.
Hey, Kevin,
just
humor
to be
me
clear,
just for a moment. Sorry, go ahead,
What's
Rob.
that?
I was just saying, looking at Kevin's computer, he's on a Mac, obviously, but on a Windows computer, it's in your Documents folder as well. So it doesn't matter what make computer you're on. Documents, and there you'll find the JL Audio folder, the tune folder, and then your traces, targets, sound files, all of that stuff.
Fantastic. So what I was going to ask Kevin is, now that you have created a wave file, can you show how to pull that up, like Rob was kind of talking about with file playback? So move that off your screen.
Oh, sorry, it's playing now.
So just for the record, most receivers and even OEM systems that have a USB drive will be able to play a wave file, so long as you don't go crazy with any of the sample rates and things like that. 44.1 wave file will play in almost anything you'll ever encounter. So Kevin, go back into Tune Software real quick. All right, you see, do what Rob was saying earlier. Click on File Playback. Right, now,
you want me to go in and choose it?
Yeah, exactly.
And
show people how they can just pull up that file in there. Right, and there it is right on top. Now, if you have other wave files, like a music library that you wanted to point to, you could do that as well. It'll play those wave files back right from that menu right there. So now if he clicks the play button, there you go. Very loud. But it works. So yeah, I just wanted to show everyone how to do that. Now switch it back to real-time generation, so when you go to do things later, you don't get screwed up.
Right. I think I just scared the neighbors right there. But so that is, and I'm going to exit out of here and show you. If I click the hamburger up here, which is just the 3 lines next to signal generator, it gives me that same screen. It's just a shortcut to get there. A lot of times I just use this area here. I use the play button right from there. All of that. It's just easier. It's very condensed, and it's on the main screen. So it makes it a lot easier, a little bit of a shortcut to go through and do some of that stuff too. So just works out very, very well.
You can change the level of the playback in the upper right-hand corner there. So you'd be able to use the up and down arrows or direct enter a value in there to change the level. We recommend keeping it at -12 unless you have some need to change it, which you probably shouldn't. And of course, the play button turns into a pause button when it's not actually playing something. So all of that was done by design so that the controls you most likely need are right there on the main UI, so you don't have to go into the menus unless you need to make some more detailed change, like some of the things that we just showed you.
Really, the only change you would need to make in the menu is if you were doing a sine wave or square wave and whatever the frequency of that tone is going to be. Other than that, pink noise, white noise, periodic, all of that you can do on that front screen there.
For the record, most of the default settings that we've established were intended to be the most likely things that you're going to use. So how things are positioned, the settings that we've configured, all of those were designed anticipating initially that single mic application that you're probably going to be using now, or whatever's going to come with Macs once you get your hands on one of those. So.
And I will say this, I've been using the signal generator for probably close to a very long time, we'll say. I don't want to make anybody upset or anything there, but we've been using it for a very long time. I've not ever had to change the minus 12 dB setting on there, just FYI. It will stay there, and you really won't have to do anything with that. So. All righty. So next on the list here is changing trace colors. So let's take a look at being able to change our trace colors. Yes, the answer is yes. You can go in there and change your trace colors without any issues. I'm going to actually pull up this in one. This is the screen I'm used to looking at rather than the two on there. So I'm going to do one thing really quick, and that's save a trace. So I can show you how to save or change the colors differently on your targets and save traces and all of that stuff as we go through here. So I'm going to go ahead and save a trace. You can save a trace in two different ways. One is pressing the space bar, which is the way I do it because it's very easy. I normally have my hands right there on the keyboard. The other way is you can select the little capture button down here in the bottom right-hand corner. So I'm going to hit the space bar, and I am just going to say saved measured trace and hit OK. Now we have our saved measured trace on there. So to go ahead and change the colors on there, we're going to go ahead up and pull our little drop down from the top right hand side. Now it is a little bit different between changing the color of a saved trace and changing the color of a current trace, but kind of the same direction, just a little bit different step. So I'm going to go ahead and change the color of my current measured trace. All I have to do is right click right there on it. Makes it super, super easy. And I can go in there and change my color. And I can select anything from the spectrum here. And it is real time, so you can see my trace that is moving is actually changing colors there. So we'll go ahead and leave this guy. We'll say every time I go to change a color, I see that same color up on the screen already. We're going to change it to blue and hit OK there. So now my measured trace now is blue. Now, if I want to change one that is already saved, so I have my saved measured trace here that I saved a second, I'm going to go ahead and right click, then resave as. And when I hit resave as, it gives me that same little icon that I can go in here, grab the three little lines, and then change the color of my saved trace. So I'm going to go ahead and make my saved trace there bright green. So right click on any of them right there in the drop down menu. Oops, and hit OK. Yes. So I can go ahead and right click on any of these. It just depends on if you just change the color immediately or with the saved trace, you have to go to resave as, then change your color on that one there. And then it's going to ask you, do you want to resave that as a different name, or do you just want to override it? Depending on what you're doing, you may not want to override it. You may want to just have it as a secondary trace on there, and you can do that too. So it makes it nice and easy to go through and change your colors on your traces. So
just in case you need to do that.
Just in case you need to do it. You know what? I actually do it sometimes when I'm saving traces more often than the measured trace. Yeah. I normally keep my measured trace just that color that we really have no name for.
Yeah, it's not a very pretty color. So if you wanted to change it, you can. There is some history to why it's chosen. We won't bore you with any of that. Engineering people, we'll just leave it with that. But I really appreciate what Kevin went ahead and did there. He showed us how we can customize that to make it what we want, and as an individual. And I think the more powerful thing is to capture traces so that as you start cascading a bunch of different things on the screen, you can distinguish them and group them by, color groupings, different shades of red if you want, whatever you needed to do. You have the full color palette from your operating system, either the Mac or the PC, to go ahead and make that whatever you need it to do. There's also for the live data, there's a restore to default. So if you wanted to go back to what we had originally said, you just restore to default and you're good to go.
That's a really good point, is capturing traces in colors to signify kind of their passband, right? So your tweeters, I'll use red for my tweeter target, and then also kind of red for a different shade of red for my measured trace on there too. And kind of as I capture them, I will make them a corresponding color, blues and blues, and then yellows and yellows. So this is a really good point, Steve. Just kind of mentally gives you a quick visual of what's going on there on the screen itself. So Steve's favorite is up next. So the spectrograph is up next, and we're going to actually switch back over to the keynote here for a second. And what exactly is a spectrograph? Well, the spectrograph kind of gives us another dimension of the RTA. It is directly linked in with the RTA itself, and you kind of think about it as looking down at the trace and seeing what has happened over a duration of time. It is real time. So when you look at the bottom of the screen, that is what's going on now. But as time passes, that data stays on the screen and just kind of scrolls up for you. And I was trying to think of a good way to describe this as a different
it is tricky because it's probably best to just kind of show people what it is. I use it more for troubleshooting than I do for audio analysis.
Really?
I'm not saying you can't do it for that, but we're so used to some of the other tools that it may be more confusing to try to use Spectrograph as a measurement analysis thing. Again, I use it for troubleshooting, and I think you have a couple of slides that kind of lead into that. Yeah,
I do. So here's a visual of the spectrograph, and this is full screen on the spectrograph, and we'll show kind of it adjacent with the RTA there also, which is a little bit more important, but to get that full nice representation of what's going on here and what's playing. So when we take a look at this spectrograph, we can see that the color is kind of with the energy, or how the energy goes on there. And how it's laid out there. So when we take a look at this, I actually have my mid-range tweeter and subwoofer that is playing on here at this point in time. But the microphones, actually, I placed the microphone in front of the mid-range, so you can see how that mid is putting more energy into the system. And then you can see a couple lines going horizontal across here, 3 in particular. I clapped 3 times to be able to put those up there. And I clapped within about a 3 to 4 second duration to just kind of give you an idea of how much data kind of scrolls up as it's going there. And as these things keep going and time is passing by, we can take a look and see that those start going off the screen. Now I only have my last clap that was being displayed on the screen there at that point in time. Now, this one is actually one that Steve threw up on here, and this is a spectrograph. It's real time. It kind of shows that trail of data that's going on. And like Steve said, it's great for troubleshooting, because if you have a noise and you didn't kind of know what was going on, or maybe you didn't think that maybe that wasn't going, it happens on your RTA screen so quickly. But then you can go to your spectrograph and look and see, oh, wait, there was energy at this frequency that happened. I'm not imagining things. Things are going on, and you can make your adjustments as necessary.
So before you hit play, if you notice, like right around the 1K mark, if you could hover your cursor over the 1K, that little blob, right, you'll see that something happened there. And then as you go down, you'll see something happens a couple of times in sequence, right? That's sort of what Spectrograph can do for us. It kind of gives you a history. On an RTA, those blips and whatnot will show up, but then they'll fade away. But with the Spectrograph, you get some prolonged visibility. Now, if you hit play on that little video, there you go. So you can see how the Spectrograph is scrolling up. That first little mark you see that extends all the way over, I slid a cup across my desk. Now I'm playing a 1K test tone, and now I pulse it a little bit at a lower level, and you can kind of see right around the 1K. You see the spike that's coming up on the RTA. Those are claps. Basically, it was just clapping. And those were those sequences that you see. So once the RTA has settled down, you could still see where those signals came from. This is really good if you have a noise, like one use case might be something like this, where you have a door chime that you can't get rid of because it's part of the audio system. Yes, door chime, Jeff Hope.
I was waiting for that. I had it queued up, ready to go.
So what this allows you to do is you can see it on the RTA, but if you don't want to sit there listening to it over and over again, just let it scroll on the spectrograph and say, I see exactly how wide it is and exactly where it is, and I could hone in on an EQ and maybe pull that tone down to make it a little bit more bearable. So yes, exactly, Jeff. Great for finding chimes. Did you want to switch over and I can kind of show some more of this over here?
Yeah, go ahead. Let's switch over and show some live.
So this is my screen right here, and you can see my voice is affecting it. So all that orange stuff that's happening up in this area here, that's basically this area. So now Spectrograph and RTA can work really, really well together. So I've selected the bottom graph, and I'm going to change the scaling and the position, and you'll see the heat map is changing with it. So as I'm at the top of the screen, you'll see that those are the white signals on the top in the spectrograph. And as I go up even higher, that's just noise at this point. That's crazy. But if I go the other way, you can see that I can position the spectrograph by changing the position of the RTA. And this allows us to pick up on things like if I clap, again, the RTA settles down, but you see that line in the spectrograph of where that clap was. So it likes to persist a little bit longer. It's not actually showing a time domain, but like Kevin said earlier, if you were looking down at the RTA response, that's those peaks that you're seeing. So if I kind of move this up like that, those peaks are now off the top of the screen, and it's showing those as white. You're really at the very, very tops of those peaks. And if I keep going, it gets even worse. So it's sort of like you're looking down on the RTA, and as things happen, it'll capture that and show it on that spectrograph. Really great for troubleshooting noise. Yes, it's also very powerful for showing what's happening in an audio system, but we're more accustomed to looking at a real-time analyzer on RTA, and I kind of like the lines over the bars. So there we go.
I do too. I actually switched over to my lines there a minute ago.
So I'm going to do something real quick on this. You can see I'm playing a 1 kilohertz tone. And if I change the level of that, now it's a lower level. And I'll just turn it off. So now you can see the spectrograph is showing you exactly what I did, even though I stopped doing it quite some time ago. You can see there was a lot of high energy at 1K, then there's a little bit of energy at 1K, and then there's a clicking noise at 1K as I went through and turned it off. So that's what I like to use a spectrograph for. Also, when it's thunder and lightning here, I get to watch the thunder and the low frequency stuff is really fun. So. Anyway, that's what I wanted to show.
All right. Thanks, Steve.
No problem.
So our next one is going to be level settings, and we're going to switch back over to my computer here and go over level setting. It's fairly simple. You would probably be doing you would be doing the same level settings with any other software out there. However, for now, we're able to do it in one place. And you can think about it as two different systems, and we'll kind of get into these two different systems here a little bit, and where you would be setting these levels at on here. So prior to Tune 4, you may have been taking measurements, and you've done a system that you would have to align the measured trace to targets and do all of that stuff in there. But you may have forgot because it's been such a long time ago that you went in and set all of that stuff. But I guarantee you at some point in time, you had to go in and do all of this stuff with the other systems on there. So when we talk about the different levels on here, there's a couple different things I want to mention. We have the levels that are in the software that we want to take a look at. And then we also have the levels that are kind of more variables that you deal with. Receiver levels. If you're dealing with an MVI or VXI, you have your DRC levels, your output level trim on your amplifier. And those ones may just be with VXI or MVI, but if you're working with another DSP amplifier, you may have similar settings to that output level trim and DRC and all of that good stuff that you have to go in and mess with. So again, if you're using 2 different programs, you'd still be going in and messing with all of these levels. It's just in one spot now. I'm not sure if that makes it confusing or not, but it makes it a little easier once you kind of get to know everything. And we're going to walk through and show you guys some of this stuff here really quick, if I can get my mouse to work there. So
just to be clear, there's more than one level that you might be adjusting at any given point. I think Kevin's going to go into that. I'm going to steal his thunder a little bit, but effectively there's 3 types of levels that you're likely to change. The one that's most common to you is probably what's in your DSP processor's software now, the output level, which is changing the output of the amplifier itself. I think Kevin's going to save that for last, though, I think.
I am, yes.
Okay, good. So the other 2 that you're going to do is the captured data that the live data that you're bringing in from the microphone. There's a way that you can change the position of that data. And then, of course, there's captured data that you can change the position of the captured data. And I think Kevin's going to show all of that, but there's also target data. So there's several different things that we talk about when we talk about levels, and I believe Kevin's going to cover all of them.
Yeah, I am going to kind of go over quite a bit of them. When I first get into this, and I know I had set this level earlier on here, but when I first get into this, the first one I want to mess with is I want to get my measurement trace close to my targets, but I don't want to be too close to where outside or ambient noise is affecting what my measurements are in a negative manner. So I want to get that trace pretty close up in there. I'm going to be quiet for a second, and I'm going to show some adjustments on here so you can go through and take a look at this here. So I'm going to make some adjustments. I'm going to be quiet so you can see the adjustments actually happening with my target or my measured trace here. And I'm only affecting my measured trace. I don't want to really go in and measure or take into my targets. Think about this. When you're doing with your measure, you're doing one adjustment. If you're messing with the targets, it's going to take quite a bit. You're going to have to go through and do your do each target individually and all of that good stuff. You may want to do it at some point once you kind of get more used to the software. But as of now, mess with your measured trace offset. It's going to really, really help out and really get you nailed down in there. And the reason why we have this is we don't want that trace to be so low that we have to rail up our speakers to meet our targets on there. So we give you this offset so it brings the level of the microphone up so that way you can make measurements and take meaningful measurements without damaging equipment or anything like that. So
can you repeat that one more time, please, Kevin?
I was going to say the same thing.
Do
in the
not
exact same manner.
Volume. Change the offset.
Change the offset, right?
So Kevin, I'll help you out here. So what Kevin's talking about is when you first configure an external microphone, like a USB sound card like he's using now, or the microphone that I'm using, which is a USB microphone, the software has no idea what the level of that microphone is. There's so many different variables that can affect that by default, it's going to assume it's what's known as dBFS. It's a full scale, and we've done trainings on dB before and how you need a relative number. dBFS is relative to full scale. It's the only thing the software knows. What we're most accustomed to, however, is what's known as dBSPL. And if you wanted to set things at dBSPL, the only real correct way of doing it is with what's known as a microphone calibrator, something that looks like this. And if you've never seen one of these, it's okay. Most people don't see this. Actually, if you don't mind, here. So it's basically, if I pull this little top part out, inside there is a little speaker. You can kind of see it. And on the back is a switch that allows me to play a 1 kilohertz tone at a certain level. And let me try to rotate that. 94 or what is it, 114 dB. The 94 dB is an important one. I'm going to touch on that right now, actually. So if you could share my screen again real quick. I did something earlier. So what I'm looking at here is the same thing I showed you before. But if I come into this, and what I'm going to do is I've selected the bottom graph. I'm going to go full screen. And then I'm going to show in here that my UMM6 right now shows 0 dB. But if I right click and clear my calibration, you'll see it says 117.21. That's the trace offset that I've applied for this microphone. That's a lot, isn't it? No, it's normal. So from DBFS to from DBFS to DBSPL, there will be an offset, and it will be pretty significant. So if I take this value, I'm going to copy it so I don't forget it, and I put 0 in instead, where'd my measurement go? It's off the bottom of my screen, that little data indicator down here at the bottom. You'll see that if I take my down arrow and I keep going down, there's my data. It's the same data. It's just been scaled down the screen. And if you look at the values on the left, it's sitting down around about minus 48 or minus 60. But if I go back to my default view by clicking this button over here on the right-hand side, if I click that, this is sitting up here around 75. So the difference is about, 117.21, right? You want to know how I got that number? I'm going to show you. Let me find it here. I dragged it out before. My microphone fortunately came with a calibration file. Let me just move this out of the way. So I'm going to take this. This is the calibration file that came with it. If I open it up, the very first line right here, it says sense factor equals. And this number right here is minus 23.205. So remember I showed you the mic calibration file? It's using the 94 as a reference. So if you took 94 and subtracted a minus 23.205, and let me see if I can do this for you. Oops. Let's see if I can pull this up. Let me find the calculator. Calculator, there it is. I wasn't fully prepared. Don't look at my schedule.
I thought you had all of these apps on your computer to expedite these processes.
I know. So if I took the 94, which is the default thing for a mic calibrator, and I subtracted a minus 23.205.
Oh, you forgot a.
Did I? Sorry.
Yeah.
94 minus 23.205. Hold on. It's supposed to be a negative.
You got to hit C a bunch of times. We got to teach them how to use a calculator.
Minus a negative 23. See, this calculator doesn't let me do negative. Trust me. If you took 93 and you subtracted a negative 23.205, you'd wind up
the same as addition.
I was going to say, just add 23.05.
It is, but the number is a negative. So I just want people to pay attention to the symbol on there, just in case your calibration file doesn't show the minus sign.
Gotcha.
So that's what we're looking at there. Come on. There we go. So now what I've done is all I've done after I enter that value is I right click and I set that as my calibration. So if I wanted to do an additional offset, I can then move the trace up or down any way I'd like. The data is only moving up and down the screen. It's not actually changing the data.
I think that's the important thing. It's all about placement, and
exactly.
Nothing changes in the measurement itself.
Correct. Absolutely. That's what I wanted to share.
Yeah, and you want to find that happy medium of getting your data placed in a space that is close enough to your targets that you're not going to have to rail on your equipment and possibly damage it to take good measurements, but you also don't want it so high that your ambient noise is now being, at your targets on there. So we take a look, and I'll actually set this measured trace. I'm not as technical as Steve is with the mic calibrator and all of that good stuff. So for the 999.999% of the other people out there who are like me and don't own a mic calibrator,
I'll put 120 in and be done.
Yeah, we actually will come in and I'll switch over to myself here, and I'll come in and I'll just be quiet for a second, but I'll change this number so it is in that good happy medium space. So let me be quiet for a second and show you guys some measurements. And you'll notice that curve's exactly the same. Like we said, the data is not changing. We're just changing the placement of the data itself. And I'll probably keep it somewhere in that 115 range area.
Yeah, and what I find usually is when I'm playing with my traces and adjusting the offset, I like to use the line feature on RTA instead of bars, because that way the target traces aren't covered. But I try to avoid or limit the amount of boosting I need to do on my EQ. So I'll actually place the target typically a little above my RTA trace, a little above the targets. So it's more of a cut in the EQ and trying to boost and ramp everything up. So, in a perfect world, we want to minimize the use of filters, right? So that means using as little the parametric EQ filters as needed. So get it, close or a little bit above where you're going to minimize the amount of work that's needed. And again, for me, if you don't see the target traces, switch it to lines instead of bars, at least for the initial, adjustments, and then you can switch back to bars if you have to have that. But we do have a good question that came up from Jeffrey Hall. Is it better to raise the offset of the measurement or lower the offset of the target curve? For me, it's all about being efficient. It's a lot easier to move a single RTA trace up with offset than have to move all of the individual and summed traces for the targets down to where the RTA trace is. So it really doesn't matter. In terms of efficiency, moving the sole RTA trace up is a lot easier to do.
Yeah, especially when you're dealing with a single mic and we're just dealing with the RTA and we're not bouncing between different screens and stuff like that.
Exactly.
It is for what we're using this for now and what we're talking about in this training here. It is just use the measured trace offset and you will be good. Now, there may be instances where you do want to change that target level and you can go ahead and offset those target traces. But again, like Rob said, you're moving multiples and you're doing more work than you need to do, especially when we're just talking about utilizing the RTA and the single mic measurements on there. Did I steal your thunder, Steve?
Not at all. No,
Okay.
you augmented everything. It was perfect.
All righty. So one thing I want to mention, and if you guys notice, is I'm not playing any noise. I'm not playing any amplifiers. I'm doing this measure trace with everything as quiet as possible. The system's not playing or anything like that. Now I want to get into my variable levels. I'll probably set my receiver at about 75% in there, somewhere in that area. And I'll keep my DRC completely turned down. I want my DRC all the way turned down. Now you can make some different adjustments on these. You can have your receiver volume at 50% and then change your DRC a little higher, things like that. These are just my personal preference of going through. I don't know if Steve and Rob kind of have those same kind of layouts. I'm sure they are very, very similar to one another when we go through and do these tunes here. So I have my DRC turned down all the way right now because I don't want things to go ahead and rail on. And I'm
rail is a technical term, everybody.
Right. So I'm going to go ahead and play my pink noise, I'm on sine wave from our previous.
Yeah, good catch.
So I'm going to go ahead and play my my pink noise here. You'll hear it come up in the background a little bit. I'm not going to turn it up really, really loud, but this is where I'm going to bring things up to kind of meet my targets. Now, if I find myself having to rail that too loud to get to my target, then I'm going to bring my trace offset a little bit higher on there. So that way I'm not damaging equipment just to get my good measurement. Again, you got to find that happy medium on there. So once I get that done, I can go ahead and make my adjustments. And I'm going to leave my DRC set at that point in time, and I'm just going to use my mute buttons there. That way, when I go through and I do my EQing, my levels are going to all be set. Now, at this point in time, I'm going to come down here and I'm going to make my output level trim adjustments to get me lined up with each individual target for my tweeter, mid bass, and subwoofer. In this case, my mains and my subwoofer on there, and make those level adjustments at that point in time, and just use my mutes to mute each channel as I go down through. So as you can see, there's a lot of different volumes that are level adjustments that are on there. However, you can go through, simplify it in your brain, and just remember that you're doing two different things, but you're doing it on one screen, which actually makes it easier when you don't try to overthink it.
Totally agree.
All righty, so we're going to switch back over to the screen. Dual monitors. Can you use dual monitors, and should you use dual monitors if you have them? I know a lot of tuning rigs out there have dual monitors on them, whether they're using two different computers on there or they're using one computer with different software versions on there. Yes, you can use dual monitors. So if you are using one computer with two monitors, you can go ahead and do that. And the way I do it, when I do it, which isn't very, very often at all, but if I am going to go ahead and do it, what I do is I break out each of the different panels on there. So I have my EQ panel, I have my crossovers, my outputs, my delay, polarity, all of that on there right there that I'm able to go ahead and make my adjustments. And basically, I'm looking at my screen layout like this. So I have all my adjustments on my right-hand monitor, and I have my measured response on the left-hand monitor on there. But again, the nice thing about this is if you are working with a VXI or MVI amplifier, your first trace is actually going to be the one that you are working with. So it makes it nice and easy. You don't have to break them out. The one that you are working with will be displayed across the bottom of your measurement screen. So you don't have to break these out if you don't want to. So just keep that in mind that you can, but you don't have to on there. So tuning with a tweak. How are we going to go ahead and tune with a tweak itself? Well, tuning with a tweak as of now isn't quite as seamless as a VXI or MVI amplifier. Tuning with the tweak with Tune 4, I should say, isn't as seamless on there to go through and tune with a VXI or MVI. However, there will be a future update that will be out to resolve this. For now, you can run two instances of Tune 4. And to do this, all you have to do is go down to your icon down there in the bottom, and you would select that. And you can see that I have new instance pops up there that is circled in red. And I would select that, and it would bring up a second instance of Tune. So I would have one for measurement and one for the tweak control like we have on here. Now, two monitors for this type of instance would probably be a little bit beneficial for me. I'm showing it on one because it makes more sense. You can see both of them on there at the same point in time. But
Evan, how did you get that menu to show up? The one that says second instance?
Well, I can come down here and right click on my tune icon.
Okay, good.
And new instance is right there. So
perfect. Thank you. I believe it's the same on the PC, Rob. Can you confirm that?
Yeah, let me go home and get on my PC.
Oh, that's right. It's at home. Sorry.
But yes,
it is the same.
You do right click on the icon.
Okay, so it's a right click.
It's not called new instance on a PC, but you can right click and start a new version of Tune. But if I remember correctly, there is a sequence to do that, right, Steve?
Yes, and I believe there's a Help Center article on that.
Not yet.
Not yet. Coming soon.
So once you have that up and you're running, you can go ahead and you see your measured response on one version of Tune, and then you see your tweak on the other. You can go ahead and make your adjustments on your tweak instance of Tune, and you'll see your changes being made on there. You can also go in there and on your main left instance and run a simulation mode and be able to kind of get some of your settings laid out, and then you just transpose them with your keyboard, your EQs and all of that stuff. It'll get you really, really close on a lot of your adjustments there. So it's really nice to be able to run that simulation mode, be able to get a lot of that data, and then just type it over into your tweak screen there. So you do have that option, and that is for now. Again, there will be a future update and improvement that will give you some better connectivity and better functionality with your tweak process.
Since you brought up simulation mode real quick, Kevin, there was a question that came up earlier from Jason, and I answered this in the chat on Facebook, but he asked if we can do the auto EQ to target functionality in measure only mode. And measure only mode is, as it implies, it's measure only. So if you are not working with a VXI or MVI DSP amplifier, whether you're working with a tweak or a non-JL audio DSP, but you want to see what that kind of auto EQ to target would be, use VXI or MVI simulation mode. Use the measure tab, still works the same, except now it's going to act like it's connected to a VXI or MVI amplifier. So in simulation mode, as long as you kind of follow all the steps we've been talking about the last couple of sessions, you should be able to auto EQ to target, write down the values for the center frequency, the Q response, the gain level. And again, the filters may be a little different than what's in the DSP you're working with, but they should correlate close enough to where you can write down those values, manually input them into your DSP, and see those results. So you cannot do the automations in measure only mode, but with simulation mode, we can simulate them and then manually input those into the DSP you're working with. So a question came in from Javi asking about target curves. He says he downloads or loads a 3-way target for the front stage, which is active, but he has a rear coax set up. What is the best way to switch the target?
All right.
So if I understand the question correctly, we have a 3-way target for the fronts and then want to probably use a target for the rears. If that was the case,
you want to pull up my screen there.
Kevin's already on it.
I can show how to.
It's a lot easier to show than explain.
Targets here. Do you want to take the question off for me, Rob?
Oh, yeah, that probably helps too, huh?
Am I live again? Can you hear me or no?
No,
we can hear you. Yes.
Okay.
We got you. We got you there. So if you want to go ahead and switch your targets, it's fairly simple, and we've given you many different targets on there and the capabilities to load them. To switch them, you actually go to your targets right here on the right-hand side, select targets, and then at the bottom, you'll see load here in our little target area. So we'll see load. We'll select load. And this will bring up my targets that are available. So these ones will be the ones that are loaded on here automatically whenever you download the software. So you have a 2-way, a 3-way, and a 4-way target. You can just come in and select the 2-way, and that's actually the one that I have on the screen at this point in time. And you would just tune your coaxes to this main target here. Now, your rear speakers can throw in a bunch of different things. I don't know if I would spend a ton of time going in and really dialing them in. I also wouldn't cross them over as low as this main target is on there too. I like to cross over my rears a little bit higher just so they're not pulling me back. And also I bring my levels down on my rears quite a bit there also. So you can EQ to target, but then you might want to bring your filter up a little bit on there so that way you're not playing them as low frequencies as the rest of the speakers in there. I think what do we normally do rears at 100?
100 is the
100.
default in our project files for the setup tool.
Yeah. So normally run them off at 100 and then bring your levels down quite a bit. So that's how you go ahead and change targets. And I can actually go ahead and load one in here. It doesn't take me very long. No. I can load a 4-way target in here. I just double click on that and it says my target settings will be overwritten. That's fine. I go ahead and now I've got my 4-way target loaded in there. And then I can just go back to my load, grab my 2-way target, and hit yes. And now I've got my 2-way target back on there. So it's very, very simple to switch between targets and very quick to switch between those different targets on there.
When you go to adjust it though, just make sure you switch back to output mode and you're not still in target mode. Otherwise, you're going to be EQing the target curve trace and not the actual output of your speakers.
It's actually why we put the bright orange across the top of a lot of the controls.
Yeah, bright orange.
I wish we had that bright orange earlier on in the beta process. I might have wasted a lot of time doing that one day. We're not all perfect. What can I say? So another good question that came up from Daniel is placement for the microphone and where we would want to EQ or measure from. Do we do the driver's location or the center of the vehicle. And that's where, multiple mics is nice because we can definitely get a larger sphere to measure in. But really, it comes down to the end goal of the system and who you want it to sound good for. For me, the driver's seat, tuning at the driver's seat should always be the number one priority, because that's probably where the person who, invested into their audio system is going to be sitting. So it's got to sound its best there, in my opinion, at least. The nice thing with our DSPs, I know there's other DSPs out there as well that have presets where then you can do multiple systems. Like in my car, I'm in the car most of the time by myself, so everything's dialed into my driver's seat. If my wife's in the car, she can't tell the difference. It's still dialed into the driver's seat. But if I have someone like Steve or Kevin with me, I don't want them to have bad sound. So maybe I have a preset that's then tuned to the center of the vehicle where the microphone or mic array is in between both seats. And that way you're going to have compromises on both sides, but you're going to have a more average response in the middle of the vehicle. So really it comes down to who do you want it to sound its best for, and the goals of the system. And, for our retail partners, it's always important to make sure we discuss with our customers, what are the goals? Do you want it only to sound good at your seat? Do you want the other people in the car to have a better listening experience? And that's when then you can start taking advantage of presets and having, extra systems, if you will, in your vehicle. And that's when you'll start moving the mics around to different places and have some fun.
Yep. The presets are really helpful in that.
Yeah.
Right? So you can switch between them. Obviously, each one's a new tune, but, if you get good at it, it can be done pretty quick.
Yes. Let's see. Is there anything else? Jeffrey was asking, is there a preferred, in the drop-down averages setting, is there a preferred value for the RTA in doing the auto EQ to target automation?
Leave it to Jeffrey to keep asking good questions. So during the development process, we tried to find settings that would be generally useful for most applications. The truth is, there is no one setting that's going to be good for every single application, which is why we give you the options. That's why the dropdown has so many different options. We have found that the default settings, which I believe are 1/12th octave, or is it 1/6th octave, guys? Can't remember.
1/6, I believe.
So it's 1/6 octave, and as you go lower in frequency, you might want to change that to something with more resolution, like 1/12th or 1/24th. At higher frequencies, getting all that hash, all the variation at really high frequencies, it'll drive you nuts. So I wouldn't recommend doing that at higher frequencies, but as you go lower in frequency, consider increasing the resolution to start seeing things that really matter down at lower frequencies. How low? Play with it. Try it. See different things. What was the other part of the question? The settings for the averaging. In terms of the averaging, what we would recommend doing is I like a nice stable RTA trace. I want it to be nice and consistent, and it's not constantly jumping all over the place. I want it to be pretty consistent. Most of the time when I have it set, it's almost like it's not even moving. So you have to wonder if it's even on until you make a change, and then it moves relatively rapidly. So it's a nice balance between rapid response to change and not so rapid that it's changing all the time. Once you get that, there's a little trick that you can use. You hit the V key on your keyboard, and it'll automatically refresh the data that's on the screen. And once it settles in, that's when you hit that auto set EQ to target. That's the best bet. Pick an averaging rate that works for you, and the banding that's appropriate for the band that you're working with. So high frequencies, 1/6 works. As you start going lower to maybe a mid-range driver, maybe do 1/6 or 1/12th. A mid-bass driver, 1/12th, maybe 1/24th, and a subwoofer. If you're going to go that crazy, you can do something like 1/24th or 1/48th if you really want to. It won't make that much of a difference on the lower frequency on the subwoofer at that point. The reason why there's settings is because there are different things for different applications. That's why we did that.
Bill's asking if Tune 4 has the ability of doing a dual FFT, impulse phase, blah, blah, or does it? No. Yes, all of that does require the Max system.
Right.
Tune 4 with a USB sound card or microphones, a single FFT for RTA, spectrograph measurements, and of course the meters and gain panel. So you'll get those for free with Tune 4. And then with the Max system, that unlocks the dual FFT, where we can then take advantage of magnitude measurements, impulse, phase, and the 5 mic averaging for RTA and magnitude responses. So
Right on.
you need Macs for those. And let's see, question
So
here.
Jeff was clarifying. I did talk about both. I talked about both the banding as well as the averaging. So the banding is what I was referring to, the 1/6 or 1/12 and things like that. The averaging would be the 5/0 versus the 1 or 2 seconds, 3 seconds. That's the one that can create a very stable trace. So the averaging creates the stability of the trace and the response time, and the banding determines how many data points are effectively shown on screen.
Okay, here. Question from Tanner on a 4-way, kind of out of the Tune 4 world, but we'll see if we can help him here real quick. On a 4-way active system with a VX 800/8i, does it make any difference when mixing channels prior to the EQ as opposed to mixing after? Not quite sure I understand that. I know in our software, the routing goes from your inputs straight into an EQ block and then out of the EQ block to your outputs.
I wonder if maybe he's referring to bridging.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, if you're doing the way our software is configured on the setup tab, if you take a look at it, we have our upper input panel or our mixer that goes to your EQ blocks. Then we have the output panel. So any channel summations you would be doing, you would do that prior to the EQ block that you're routing that signal to. And then from there, it'll go out to your dedicated output. So hope that's the question. If not, reach out to our tech support team, technical@jlaudio.com, or the help icon on every page on the JL Audio website, Tanner, and they can help you further if needed. And I think that we have one more question here. I guess we can call this the last one. About Fix. Are we coming out with a Bluetooth version for Fix, or does it have an optional Bluetooth adapter? Nope. Fix is straight. You don't even need a computer technically for Fix. You can calibrate directly from the device itself. Of course, if you are calibrating a Fix, I always prefer to do it on the computer through Tune 4 software, because it will show you what's coming into Fix, what it did to correct it, and what the actual output is. Once the Fix is calibrated, there's really no need to touch it other than on a Fix 86, maybe a DRC 205 for master volume and subwoofer control. But other than that, once it's calibrated, it's done. You don't need to touch it. And that stuff should be done before the installation's buttoned up anyways, because you got to get it calibrated, get your levels set. That should not be something that's done after the whole car's put together.
I want a Bluetooth OEM integration piece. I just put it in and everything is done wirelessly.
That'd be nice.
Right?
Maybe a subtle plug here. Will there be hands-on classes in Dallas at Knowledge Fest? Yes, we will be at Knowledge Fest in Dallas in 3.5, 4 weeks. Kevin and I will be there. Steve's too cool for school, apparently. But Kevin and I will hold the fort down. We have I think 4 or 6, I don't know if we've got the official number yet, classes that we'll be training on for our retail partners. It's a part 1, part 2. So we're repeating those 2 or 3 times throughout the weekend. I've heard rumors we may have some demo cars that are max tuned, and I'm pretty sure we'll have the cool rig behind Steve, our tuning rig, which is an actual electrically captured acoustical measurement from our Cadillac that will be able to do some really cool demos with Max and replicate in actual changes to an acoustical measurement and all of that cool stuff. It'll be really neat, so we will be there. And we can't wait to get back to it. At least I can't. I'm going crazy sitting in my office all day.
Yeah, I'm not thrilled that I'm not going to be there, but I know you guys are, everyone watching is in good hands with Kevin and Rob going to be out there, and we have some other people that'll be there to run interference at times and help them out if needed. So, all right. So what time we got? Wow.
All righty.
2:20.
Is there anything else that we need to show, guys? Is there anything else that needs to be said or shared?
I don't think so. I know there were some questions about phase, but I think we're out of time on that. That's a kind of a deep subject, and it does require Max, which we just want to focus on our USB microphone and sound card users, because that's all we have at the moment. And as we get closer to the release of the actual Max hardware, believe me, we are going to dive deep into the impulse and phase response, because I think if I could speak for all three of us, it really is a game changer, and it really is the right way to take tuning audio systems to the next level. You know, we've talked a lot over the last year and a half about the 3 pillars, and this is without a doubt, in my opinion, and maybe I'm biased, but the most efficient and easiest way to analyze and correct phase is with the Max system, and even better with the VXI or MVI amplifier because of that tight integration between the two.
Yeah.
So we'll be talking about it a lot.
And I suspect that now that we've put this FAQ session out there, that we may be in need of doing another one. There's a number of aspects of the user interface that may require some additional explanation of why we've done certain things the way we have. And as Rob has implied, when the Max system becomes available, there'll be many, many more questions related to those, you know, the multi-mic measurements and the time-based measurements that we definitely want to get into. But to Rob's point, we want to stay focused on what people can do right now with the hardware that they already likely have, and the free version of the software that can take advantage of so many different things. That tight integration that Rob referred to, I think that is one of the biggest distinctions about what we've done, is that all of this is designed together, working with our DSP product. You can use anyone's, mind you, but with ours, you get a real big benefit that it's one piece of software that you're doing everything in. And once you've done that, it's really, really fun. It's, you know, obviously I get a little excited about this, but it's really fun to be able to go in and just make changes from one screen. And it's so fast and so easy. Like Rob said, we think it's a game changer, and hopefully you guys do too. And we're here to answer any questions to help you get there. So with that, I think we're done.
Yeah, so let's call it.
I'd say so too. So thank you all for watching, and thanks for the interaction in the chat. We always appreciate that. It helps the sessions get more exciting and active and interactive for everybody. So thank you for that. And until next time, I'll say good night.
Bye, everyone.
Have a good night, everybody.